Okay, well, I see 9:33 a.m., which I had mentioned we'd go ahead and start, and I don't hear any more folks joining online. So we'll go ahead and call to order the August 9th meeting of the SEDA COG MPO. Thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate your time and braving the elements for those of you that are in the room here with us today. We'll go ahead and just do maybe some introductions of some folks online and maybe welcome some initial first-time participants in the SEDA COG MPO meeting. My name is Steve Herman, the chair of the SEDA COG MPO and director of the Transportation Planning Program. So welcome everyone for being here at today's meeting. Looking at the online participants, just note that we see a couple we'd like to have folks identify themselves. We have guests, and just for our records, the person logged in or joining as guest, could you identify yourself, please, if you know that?
Yeah, Steve, that's Jack Kittle. Somehow my name doesn't show up today.
No worries. Thank you, Jack.
I apologize for that.
Thanks for being with us. Good luck with all the issues up there you're dealing with public works wise in the borough today.
Yeah, I think we're good right now. Thanks.
Great. Keep it going. Also see Will McLean. Could you identify yourself, Will, for us, please?
Sure. Will McLean, Transportation Planner for Luzerne County.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome. Glad to have our adjoining MPOs on our MPO mailing list, and we frequently collaborate, coordinate on a number of things. So thanks, Will, for joining us today. And the phone number, I think we did confirm, Lisa Dooley, that's your ending in 4045?
Yep, that's correct. Good morning, Steve.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. And then looking at the online folks, I don't see Kanana, but Gene, would you mind just identifying for folks some of the things that had changed with your position, and that Kanana will become our Federal Highway Administration liaison?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Apologies, we actually did have plans to come up this morning to the meeting, but unfortunately with the tornado watch out there, we thought it was more prudent to kind of remain at the office. I thought that Kanana was going to be able to join us today, but she may not be able to. I know she was heading back after we met at the Turnpike to come up and decided to that it was better to stay in Harrisburg. But I can give the background on what's happening. She became our new planner in the middle of July. And every time a new planner comes on board, we typically take a look at the regional planning assignments and then kind of shuffle those around based on everyone's new roles and responsibilities. So Kanana will be the new assigned planner for the SEDA COG region, and transitioning over from my coverage of the region previously. So that's where we are. And then going forward, Kanana will be the federal highway rep at these meetings. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Steve and the rest of the SEDA COG staff for all the cooperation and help during the time that I've been the representative for the region, and I certainly look forward to continuing to assist in any way that I can in my new role.
Great. Thank you, Gene. Really appreciate all the cooperation and guidance from you over the years since you replaced Matt Smoker, and look forward to engaging and working with Kanana. She does have an MPO background as well, the Franklin County MPO, and worked in District 8 in Harrisburg area, South Central PA, and engineering district. So looking forward to that, and she'll be a great resource for us as well. So thanks for your service, Gene. Congrats on the promotion you recently received, and everyone, you'll be hearing from Kanana in the future as our Federal Highway Administration liaison representative.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Also, we'll want to recognize Fred from PennDOT District 3 as a trainee. If you want to introduce yourself to the members, please.
I'm Fred Savage, and civil engineer trainee at PennDOT District 3, and I'm currently working on the CSPT project.
Thank you, Fred. Pivotal project, great way to kind of kickstart your career, I'm sure. So thank you. Anyone else? This is your first MPO meeting. I don't think here in the room, anyone else online? Would you like to introduce yourself if it's a first time joining us for a SEDA COG MPO meeting? I don't see any there, so thank you. We'll just do next on our agenda item listing is the public forum. If there's something that someone wants to bring up that's not on the agenda, we always welcome that, and feel free to share that if there's something hot or pressing that you'd like to bring out during the public forum, or if you have to drop off the meeting and you want to share that now, we want to give that outlet for the public forum at this time.
Hi, this is Jeff from PA Silk and Transportation Alliance. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. Good morning. Just a brief update on the state budget. As most of you are probably aware, the governor signed a state budget last month on July 11th. There are some additional dollars for transit. I think 80.5 million is the amount, which is a lot less than the almost 283 million for this year, or the over almost 1.43 billion for 5 years. That said, the governor expressed some comments when he signed the budget that he's hopeful, I think, as are many of the House and Senate Democrats, that perhaps in the fall there could be discussions to maybe add additional dollars, or maybe look at other ways for additional, not just transit funding, but for also other modes, multimodal, including Amtrak, paratransit, things like that, like both shared ride programs and some other areas. So that's where we're at this point. And at this point, e-scooters isn't really moving forward. So right now there's no consensus on any of that. The two bills around that were House Bill 2218, which came out this spring, and Senate Bill 692, which came out last year. Pretty much they're going to be done at the latest by November 30th. That's the whole sine die thing that some of you are probably familiar with, where usually nothing gets done at the end. There are rare exceptions to that, but generally that's the rule. And after that, then we look at the new members coming in both parties, both the House and Senate, and then pivoting to January of 2025 after that. But pretty much nothing's going to there isn't anything in session, I want to say, until the second or third week of September. And they're going to have a couple special elections, which is a big deal in the House because the margins are 102 to 101. And if I think there are one or two seats that are open, and if somebody's absent, you basically probably don't have the votes to get something through in the House if you're trying to get it to be of a more partisan nature. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Since Jeff kind of opened the door on funding, legislative items, I think we had noted in the pact as well with the new finalized state budget, there was going to be additional funding for local government, for road, bridge needs, and so forth. And we'll share updates on that as it comes together and what that package is or how that's designed, and certainly with the MPO members and all our counties and local governments. So anything additional from PennDOT that just gets in flux and being generated?
Yep, still figuring out who and what area is going to be responsible for that. So not sure if it's going to be PennDOT or if it's going to go for a program, other agencies. So
Thanks,
still waiting here.
Sure, appreciate it. And, it's kind of a lot to develop and get those things ramped up. So thanks for all your hard work on that. And then I did see Kanana join. So we had kind of introduced you, Gene, and we here at the MPO Kanana, but was there anything additional if you wanted to unmute and share about yourself? We kind of mentioned your brief background at Franklin County MPO and PennDOT District 8, but if you'd like to share anything else with the members, we're very glad to partner with you and have you be a resource for the MPO.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry I was a little late. The weather on my drive home this morning was a little rough. But I'm excited to be on board here and be your new liaison. Mentioned before, I was with PennDOT District 8 prior to joining Federal Highway Administration, and prior to that with Franklin County MPO, which is South Central Pennsylvania, if you're not familiar with that area. So excited to be on board and work with you all, and please feel free to reach out if there are any questions or anything like that.
Thank you so much, and we're glad you're staying safe, so that's the priority for today. Thank you. All right, we're through the opening and the public forum. Next on our agenda is item C. It's the approval of the June 14th MPO meeting minutes, and if anyone would like to make a motion, as long as you've had a chance to review that, and we'd look for a motion to approve those June 14th meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Greg, thank you for the motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Bob, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you so much. Next, kind of customary ordinary business we addressed up front is the TIP administrative modifications and amendments. There are no new amendments this time. So within your packet, we have the typical reports, the management action reports that outline all the adjustments that are occurring. Begins on page 9 of your packet for the District 2 actions, which will run through page 15. We did have this initially with the asterisk there in case there were going to be any amendments, but there are not for this time. So what we'd like to do going forward is keep this as a forum discussion, as they're reviewed by the district staff, bring your questions, your comments out. But following our memorandum of understanding on the TIP revisions, there's no formal vote or action needed on administrative modifications, those lesser revisions that are occurring with the projects. They don't rise to the level of being an amendment. Such as a new project to use federal funds, if it's going to affect air quality in those areas that have that, or if it's a $2 million or higher adjustment to a project. So with these just being lesser actions, there's no formal vote. We won't have to take the time or have a motion and a second and a formal adoption of the revisions here today. But please do continue to bring out questions, comments, and discussion throughout these. But that'll be kind of our design going forward. If they're only administrative modifications, we won't take the extra step of asking for a vote on them, only if they're rising to the level of being an amendment. So with that background, Mark, if you're having a good internet connection, would you like to highlight some of the adjustments occurred in District 2 since the last meeting?
Yes, thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. As many of you are aware, we're coming to the close of the 2023 TIP, which is the current TIP. So all districts, PennDOT and whole, is working on balancing of funds, making sure and ensuring that we're utilizing all available funds and getting them into the project. So you'll see a couple administrative actions that are doing that. One of the other items that we're doing is we're utilizing available funds to advance projects into the 23 TIP so that we can initiate them and start them up. They were previously scheduled to be 2025 project startups, but because of available funds, we've been able to advance them into the current TIP, utilize 2024 federal fiscal year funds, and advance those so that we can get crews out there for survey. We can initiate some of the preliminary engineering agreements. And what it will do ultimately is free up funds that are on the 2025 TIP for other projects. So there will be some comments in there. So as we go through the administrative actions on page 10, start right off with that type of scenario where we are moving funds between years, looking to support the 2006 P44 project for the 2024 SEDA COG bridge preservation. We move funds out of 2024 and put funds into the reserve line item for that one so that we could utilize those BOF funds for that advanced type interest that'll be displayed below. Moving down through, looking for a comment on page 11 is a case where we have 2007 over Doe Run, and Doe Run was scheduled to be a 25 start. By moving those funds and advancing those, we're able to move forward with surveys, get that survey completed before the winter season, have a better opportunity for advanced engineering through the winter months. Later on that page, you'll see final design and utility being advanced for Mahatango Creek. That is a similar scenario in which those funds were previously planned for 2025. We received an environmental clearance on that project and we're able to move forward with obligating and advancing the final design, utility, and right-of-way. The funds that are on the planned TIP, the current TIP, will then be made available in the 2025 TIP in October as they become as it becomes active. Moving down into page 12, we see in page 12 a similar scenario where we had a retro local bridge line item. In the retro local bridge line item, we had a couple projects that were delayed in construction completion. And the construction completion has to occur for those retro items, those retro agreements, so that we can have a final inspection and final invoicing and a total dollar amount for the final reimbursement. Because of the construction delays that were mostly material acquisition related, we had to make some adjustments. So we communicated internally and decided that we would be able to move those retroactive local bridge line items towards state route box culverts that are planned and programmed on the 2025 tip. When the 25 tip becomes active, we will then reimburse the retro line item and put those funds back into the retro line item in 2025, making it available for the current retro active bridge reimbursement line item. So it'll balance out in the end. Moving down to page 13, we had a number of areas. We're talking about balancing and utilizing available funds. We have a number of projects that had reduced fund needs because of low bids. That's a very fortunate place to be, to have funds available because of low bids. We also had a phase that was completed, and with that completion of the phase, we had funds that were available. So we turned those funds back into the reserve line item, totaling about $668,000 of funds that compiled federal STP, 100% state bridge, and 100% state highway fund sources. And then those funds will be distributed out to a number of different projects throughout the District 2 SEDA COG area. On page 14, we had preliminarily increased the US 22 concrete restoration project. This was a result of an updated estimate for bid. What we had actually anticipated for the bid of the project, we increased and put some funds towards that. We added $664,000. I'm happy to say that as of yesterday, the results of the bid for that project, it was a very good bid, and we're going to be looking to move some funds. It's actually going to free up some funds within that project. We will not need all of that $664,000. So we'll be working on a management action here soon to adjust those funds and put those towards another project before the end of the federal fiscal year 24. And on the bottom of page 14, you'll see a project there for the Honey Creek Road slide restoration. The Protect Reserve line item. We had, as a district, had submitted a number of applications and were successful, awarded Protect Reserve line item funds. These are discretionary funds that come back from the statewide line item and support projects within the SEDA COG MPO and within our area. This is the only project that we were able to secure Protect funds in the SEDA COG region through District 2. As you can see, there's federal funds and there are construction funds that have been added to the TIP. The Protect funds will carry over for the construction phase for both final design and construction into the 2025 TIP. This is a good resource because previously planned funds for the Honey Creek Road slide restoration project will be returned to the line item and then again made available for other projects. So we're very grateful for that award, and will be some good use at that location. Moving down, let me see. I think that was the last big item that I had on that. The very last item on that was Snyder Street Bridge. That is a retroactive reimbursement agreement, and there was a small minor adjustment because of a final invoice that had come in for that project. So at that point, I guess I could open it up for any questions for District 2.
Great, thank you, Mark. Quick commentary before anybody gets any questions on any of the project adjustments there. The Protect funds for the next TIP update that will become a regional allocation, those resiliency funds for the MPO. So I know we've identified some candidates already, some things we've supported with the districts for those applications for the statewide, but for all the county members and municipalities, please start to generate those, scope them out, and develop potential projects that maybe we could use for the regional allocation. Certainly a lot of needs out there with the bridges and roads that we need to address, slides and other issues for days such as today. We get these major rainfall events. So,
Hey,
please-
Steve, if I could add, District 2 and another planning region was awarded funds for a local road slide protection, slide restoration, as you were describing. It was awarded that for, I guess, the infrastructure. It was previously a state route. It had been turned back many years ago. And the city of Bradford and McKean has been awarded funds to proceed with that project for construction. So it is possible, and I want to make sure that everyone's aware that there are opportunities there.
Great, thank you, Mark. We know some of the counties are updating their hazard mitigation plans right now, so that's good as you're identifying the crop of potential projects to be thinking about as another funding source that'll be available. So just want to put that comment out there. Are there any questions any of the members have, particularly Jim, or I don't think Brad could join us today, and I don't think Steve Gibson could, but anything that stands out to you, Jim?
No, thank you.
Great. Thanks. If there's nothing further, Mark, appreciate the rundown on those. And
No problem.
then
Thank you.
the District 3 adjustments begin on page 16 and run through page 24 of your packet. Mr. King, are there items you'd like to highlight for us, please?
Morning, Mr. Herman, rest of the group. One thing I would point out, a lot of our pages here refer back to the amendment that was approved at the last meeting for the Danville project increase. You'll see a number of projects where there were bid savings or infusion of central office funds, et cetera, that were used to buoy that project. We do also have a number of actions in here where we did what Mark referenced in District 2, which is move funds out off of projects in federal fiscal year 24 if those funds aren't going to be utilized onto projects that they are going to be utilized. For the most part, it doesn't really free up money in our district. It's just moving cash flows around between 24 and 25 on different projects. So there's a number of of those actions involved as well. I really don't have anything to add beyond that. I just would make a comment that I have been involved with many MPOs in District 3 and elsewhere, and I really think the TIP modifications GIS feature that you include it's really awesome. I think it's a model for the state, and I really encourage all the members here to review that map that SEDA COG has put together. I think it's great.
Great. Appreciate the kudos, and many thanks to Bryce for developing that. We give a little bit of praise to our Harrisburg MPO counterparts as well. We were kind of inspired by something they were doing. This is really a good guide, we think, to all these adjustments, and you can go click on them, find these details and more information on where the projects are actually occurring. So thanks. Glad you had that positive feedback, Chris, and other members. Feel free, if there's other things you find to be valuable, to let us know. Any questions for Chris on any of the adjustments within District 3?
Chris, on page 18, the federal carryover reserve at the top of the page for $6.5 million. Was that all due to those cost overrides or increases we had on that safety corridor project?
Yeah, that is the free funds, I'll just say it like that central office gave to the region. So those are all new monies to SEDA COG for the Danville cost increase.
Okay. That really limited the impact on our regional tips, though.
Yeah, that was pretty huge.
Yeah. I noticed that when I was looking over the package, and I was surprised that we had that much of an increase. But then again, at the breakdown from that, we did redistribute some funds from the Columbia County project also to that project at 7.6 mil.
Correct. If you
That's
remember at the last meeting, that was the project that we said that we had to push out due to the 54 increase.
right. I do remember that. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm good. I'm glad to see money coming to my door.
Any other questions for Chris? Okay, if not, thank you very much. And I think Chris, you're next here for the typical update on the CSVT project goings on, and if there was anything further for the Route 54 safety project.
Sure. With regard to CSVT, in terms of the southern section paving contract, the final design and plan developments ongoing. The right-of-way acquisition plan, which for this project is generally minor strips and other small areas, was completed in June for the interchange areas, particularly the southernmost interchange with existing 11, 15, and 522. Our right-of-way staff are beginning to work with property owners there through appraisals and the negotiation process. We're still coordinating with local utility companies in the interchange areas and still developing permit applications in those areas as well. We still anticipate letting that contract in late 25 or early 26. And the mainline southern section highways still anticipated to be open for traffic in 27. Work that we're going to be impacting traffic on existing 11 and 15 and Shamokin Dam will be completed once the main lines open, when large volumes of traffic will be able to use CSVT. So that means that the 61 connector won't be fully completed and open to traffic until 2028. One other thing I'd point out relative to CSVT is that Shamokin Dam Borough and Monroe Township recently got Green Light Go grants to upgrade 4 signals on 11 and 15 that were outside the limits of work for CSVT, sort of beyond what we could reasonably include as project limits. Those signals are 8th Avenue, Laurie Lane, Park Road, and Sunbury Road, I believe. I think about 1.3 million in Green Light Go awards. So we're going to work with the municipalities to coordinate those upgrades as part of the work along 11 and 15 that's part of CSVT. So that's all I had on CSVT. With regard to the Danville project, the let date's still 10/10. We're working through the final PS&E and hopefully getting that finalized in the next couple of weeks. The current draft schedule shows completion of construction in 2030, but we're working to refine that, so I wouldn't consider that final. All the right-of-way has been cleared, and the utilities have submitted all their information to us, so we're working on final utility clearance, which should happen pretty soon. So that's all I had on both those projects. If there's any questions, can.
Great. Thank you, Chris, for the update on those projects. Appreciate it. If there's no further questions for Chris, we'll roll right along here. Up to agenda item F, that's our typical update on staff activities and other things related to our current Unified Planning Work Program. Begins on page 26 of your packet. just highlight a couple here. There's other reporting and there's some other things on our agenda we're going to address in more detail, but we'll bring out a couple things here. First, on the complete streets planning, page 27, we did adopt that last meeting in June. If you recall, the complete streets policy for the MPO. And Gannett Plumbing had also prepared a template for municipalities that they could consider for their use. So that's being finalized. Materials on our website, and it'll be a standalone page for complete streets, so we can track activity with the checklist forms, share other resources as they're developed and made available. So we'll share that once that page is served up and ready to go on our website. The strategic plan, we adopted that last meeting, if you recall, as well, the MPO strategic plan for years 2024 to 2028. Be placing that on the website, and we'll be getting regular updates to members on how it's being implemented. You know, the nice kind of tracking mechanisms that were put in place, and some of the visuals that we can do as part of that. We'll continue to hone in on those and report to you and engage with various MPO members on some of those activities and tasks, and some of the more collaborative nature for how we develop future MPO meetings and other events. So look for more to come on that. On page number 28. So I wanted to mention the public participation panel. We're really pleased with that, to initiate that last year. Kristen's work organizing that group. And we'll look to continue to engage them for underserved population representation and input for our planning processes, probably for the coordinated transit plan and long range plan. The next best uses there for engaging that group. But a lot of them are on certainly our interested parties database and list that we share information with as well. On page 29, we're going to get into our regional electric vehicle charging station implementation study, and hopefully vote to approve those findings a little bit later on. But on kind of the statewide level, there's some things that occur. NDOT's updating its statewide NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure plan for the state, and also a post-alternative fuels corridor plan. So as we're getting built out of the charging stations on the interstates, expressways, and those alternative fuel corridors, more opportunities for more of the community charging. So as that's finalized, we'll make sure we share that with the members, and there'll be certainly dialogue and a forum here at the MPO to engage and identify what we feel are the best priorities for more of these community charging locations to occur. So excited for that prospect as we're getting that built out and more opportunities there. The Green Light Go program, Chris had mentioned the awards for Monroe Township and Shamokin Borough. Those of you that have your electronic packet in front of you, you can click on the links there for the news release, but there were some additional awards within the region. We're glad to see Lewisburg Borough, Milton Borough, Kelly Township, Union County also had received those awards for traffic signal enhancements. So you can see some of the details there and their funding awards. We clicked on the recent statewide press release. So that was a great prop. You know, sometimes you see 1 to 2 approved each round, but with 5, that was a really good turnout. On page 31, continue to coordinate with our partner sister agency, the Williamsport MPO, on a number of things, but the Route 15 corridor improvement study. And we'll have that in a moment with the updates from the consult team from Michael Baker. Hopefully accept those findings for things that we can program or further support to upgrade travel along Route 15, particularly in northern Union County piece. But we wanted to mention that it's coming up here, and we'll continue to work with kind of the local regional group to guide other future planning programming related to the opening of the CSVT project and alternative trip flows that are occurring in the region. Then on page 33, just wanted to highlight, we talked about this in prior meetings, but we're acquiring some new tools. So the tool bag here at SEDA COG MPO staff and to support our local and county governments, being Urban Sim. So particularly for our long range plan update, a cloud-based tool we can use for scenario planning, modeling work for demographics, employment, and travel and so forth within the region. And also Social Pinpoint, a new online community engagement tool being served up here, most immediately for the long range plan update. But these are really nice tools that we were able to acquire and make available here. So you'll be seeing more details on that. The county planners have been reaching out, obviously, on some of the land use side of things for the urban sim model, but then for the social pinpoint, ways for your residents to find information on the long range plan, engage, have a nice interactive platform there, take surveys right through there, embed some of the GIS tools that we're looking to use and so forth. So feel free to provide us additional comments, or you see things you'd like to see reflected in those processes, but we wanted to highlight that. And then Don Keel is joining us remotely, so I won't take anything away from you, Don, if you'd like to give any updates on the LTAP goings on that are on page 33.
Just briefly, we have several things still happening in the summer. SEDA COG traditionally sponsors 2 workshops or classes that are external to the traditional LTAP program. And we've had the first one back in June for equipment operator training, and we have one coming up next week for chainsaw safety training. So that's kind of our main thrust in the summertime, but we're in the process of scheduling some LTAP classes or trying to reach out to people to see what interests are coming up. There are 4 new classes that were developed in 2024 here. I won't mention all of them, but I will be contacting some of you. Jack Kittle, you're one of them I'm going to reach out to this afternoon probably about getting some classes scheduled. So there are a lot of interesting and neat things going on. We have done some work with Bryce to develop an LTAP data analysis GIS-based tool so we can track where classes are conducted, who's attending them, where their municipalities are, and we've also been coordinating with NEPA Alliance on that and displaying that and giving some consideration, hopefully, to the PSATS people down in Harrisburg about maybe trying to do something a little bit more statewide in conjunction with that. So those are things we're working on right now, but the actual LTAP on-site class and virtual offerings season is really starting to get going, and particularly in September. So we'll be looking at that over the next few months.
Great, thank you, Don. And if any of you identify training needs you think aren't currently in the offering through LTAP, feel free to let Don know anytime, or if you think your municipalities should really host one of the courses, or you think you'd like to see us maybe partner with Penn College of Technology on something different beyond equipment operator training or chainsaw safety, feel free to let us know at any time. We're always looking to add new elements and aspects to LTAP and what needs are emerging on the local level. Other items in this section are the typical transportation alternative set aside, or TASA project updates, the rounds going back to 2018, 2021, and then the most recent one for 2023, where we had the 2 projects approved in the city of Sunbury and the Lewisburg borough. So those are in your packet. Mark, if you're still able to hear us or communicate, is there anything further on the Bald Eagle Valley Trail that you've seen since that was put out to bid, or how that shook out in June?
It was a good bid. It wasn't exact, but it was sufficient, I believe. I don't know. Is Steve Gibson on the phone?
I think he was dealing with some flooding issues today and couldn't join us.
Okay. But no, I don't see any issues with it, and I believe that it's issued. I think a notice proceed's been issued on that, and they're actually proceeding. So look forward to that connectivity towards the Avis Borough. That'll be a great addition.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for all the hard work you at the district staff level do to keep those advancing. Appreciate it. Okay, great. Other things we typically include here. Kristen works the permitting system and gives you a nice report out summary of what's going on with the highway occupancy permit submissions and the traffic impact studies and scoping forms there. For those of you that aren't already logged in or accessing those through the online portal. So that summation of activities since the last meeting is included in this section as well. So any questions, comments on any of the staff reporting items or the supplemental handouts here? Okay, and I don't see anything in the chat, so thank you all for that. We're progressing right along to agenda item G. We did not print this for those of you that have your hard copy packet just to conserve paper. We only printed your main meeting packet, but the electric vehicle charging station study and implementation plan. On Tuesday, when we shared the meeting packet, we provided the link to download that report. For those of you that are virtually, or if you have your tablets here today, you can click on that and long or see some of the citations for what's going to be covered. But yeah, just conserving paper and looking out for the environment. We didn't print that or the Route 15 border study. Those are all available for download via the website. So Don, we'll go to you first for a couple introductory remarks, and then we'll turn it over to the Michael Baker team to share more information on this beyond what we had heard at the last meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Hi again, everybody. Brian Funkhauser has been the project manager on the EV charging station study, and he's there in person, so he will be available to address anything or talk about something that might be missed. But I'll introduce a few things related to the study and then turn it over to Gabby De Silva from Michael Baker, who will lead us through a bit of a presentation on the final results of the study. At the last MPO meeting, the study and the project was just about complete, but some final touches and some finishing touches were being put on it at that point, and it is complete now. As Steve said, it can be downloaded. We've been focusing on specific sites, about 10 sites that could be possible locations for charging stations. And I won't get into that too much because I think Gabby may want to talk about that a little bit, but we did go through some of that last time as well. What I did want to feature, Steve stole my thunder just a little bit, but there are things that are going on at PennDOT right now that continue the process of the charging stations establishment in Pennsylvania from on high, from federal highways and then down through PennDOT. And he mentioned that the NEVI program is continuing to evolve. And PennDOT last month gave presentations about the next steps in that program. What they concentrated on in the first phase of this was identifying the priority corridors in a series of steps. What they're proposing now to begin really the first quarter of 2025 is 4 other areas that will be down the next part of the list, essentially, on looking at charging station areas. And the 2 areas that I think are most interest to us are corridor connections and community charging. So they've identified some additional corridors as priorities for EV charging stations to be established again. I think we'll have some comments and some feedback to PennDOT on that. There's a few other areas maybe that might be worth looking to see if they could be added to those corridors. But the other main aspect is looking at community charging locations, which certainly opens up a lot more for the MPO counties to be looked at. And some of the proposed locations that we've identified already may fit in that program. I did want to point out that in addition to them getting feedback, which is due in November, they're targeting the first quarter of 2025 for opening up the first funding opportunity. So we'll be paying significant attention to that and see where our plans might fit. Steve mentioned too a couple of the other programs, the carbon reduction program, the charging and fueling infrastructure program, which has a deadline of later this month. There's a lot going on. I think we'll be able to find some good fits for some funding opportunities that we can help working with our partners on some grant applications, hopefully. And that's where we'll be picking up things now after this first step of the report is done. So I will stop with the comments there, and hopefully I didn't go over too much that Gabby was going to say. But I think, Gabby, you want to pick up here. I don't know if you want to share your screen with anything or not, but I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. So to summarize, we ended up coming up with a list of 10 final sites. And what I'll do right now is I will share my screen just to show those locations. So through speaking with potential site hosts and vetting sites throughout the region, we came up with a final list of 10. Our 10 locations separated by county are shown here. We do have 3 sites in Clinton County, 2 sites in Columbia, 1 site in Snyder County, and then 4 sites in Union County. Of these 10 sites, we believe that 5 of these are really best postured as potential charging sites that could be moved on immediately. And those sites are the East Water Street Municipal Parking Lot owned by the City of Lock Haven in Lock Haven, PA, the Columbia Montour Visitors Bureau in Bloomsburg, Huff Nagle Park, the Evangelical Community Hospital in Lewisburg, and then the Starbucks in the Lewisburg Shopping Center. And those sites were picked through a mixture of site partner interest, overall construction costs, public accessibility, uses, visitation rates, and that's how we developed these 5 sites. Going through to our recommendations section, now that we have this final list of 10 sites, and then the 5 sites that we're recommending as immediate steps forward, what we recommend the MPO do is basically to align with the 5 identified site partners with those recommended sites, discuss the possibility of pursuing funding, discussing potential grant opportunities and those requirements. Then once generating the buy-in of all those site partners, we recommend your positioning for and developing those grant applications. Then once the grant opportunity has been identified and has been secured, then going through and moving through procurement, identifying which charging network provider the MPO would like to use, engaging with engineering, developing design plans based on the preliminary drawings we provided. And then the 4th and final option is getting those sites installed, going through and dealing with reporting requirements, making sure that all that data is being submitted to the relevant state agencies in the FHWA. And then basically repeating this whole process again and going through the other 5 sites, revisiting conversations with those potential site hosts, going forward and identifying additional sites throughout the region, and then just doing this whole process all over again. We do also have 2 additional recommendations, and one would be to leverage the eagerness and the resources that EV advocacy groups in the region have. So leveraging trade unions like the IBEW or Drive Electric PA, leveraging those resources as a means to expand outreach and just leveraging their knowledge and expertise and EVs on hand to host events. And then also leveraging local auto dealerships. And they can be part of outreach efforts and ride and drive events. And again, just leveraging local knowledge, local expertise to help engage with the community meaningfully. Brian, I don't know if there's anything that you want to expand upon as well that I might have missed.
I think you covered it all, Gabby. Thank you.
Any questions? I know there was quite a bit of content in there. I know we've been hearing throughout regular updates, but anything that stood out to any of the members within the report that you wanted to ask any of the staff or the consultant team about here today?
Who typically owns and maintains the charging stations? Is it the provider?
Typically, would you want to explain about some of the sites in particular you looked at here, Gabby, in terms of the ownership maintenance of these charging stations?
Yeah, so typically what happens is when site hosts get into an agreement with the charging network provider, usually there is a maintenance and operation agreement. So the charging network provider will own and will maintain and repair the charging stations as they need.
And I guess as far as we know, North Central was working on this, SEDA COG MPO, maybe 1 or 2 others, but we were trying to get out in advance and make sure this kind of planning document was available. These interested engaged host sites could reference this as they're going after the various grant application opportunities. From areas at the federal level. The DEP still has some smaller funding sources for EV charging stations, but this was our first attempt, and we're glad to have Michael Baker team who's already done a lot of this at the statewide level, develop this for our region, and we'll work to implement the suggestions, recommendations here, and can make this a fluid document, and look at more sites as they come to the floor with the local government, the business, industrial development, or economic development organization behind them, whatever the case may be. Those certainly can occur and cite a lot of the analysis that goes into this plan, and then our future maintenance of the data and the web map tool. We can rely upon that as well. So I think it puts us in a pretty good place. And with this community charging that we were mentioning earlier, this will hopefully have a kind of a prop right there at the ready that we could identify for this once we're getting those opportunities for more NEVI funds, the regional carbon reduction program funds where there's good fits, and we have strong candidates here to advance. So glad to have this come together. But any other questions from the members about the report, the host site assessments, or anything further? There are none. We would, as you have the action item kind of prompt on your agenda, these kind of studies that are done on behalf of the MPO, we typically look to have the study findings accepted by the MPO membership and to agree to use them in our planning and programming process going forward. So that would be the motion we would look to have on the floor. If there's a motion, Greg, thank you for the motion. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Sean, thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you. We'll certainly make sure we share this with other PennDOT staff, other interested parties that are pursuing grant applications, and we'll be continue to report back, and Don will be kind of charged the primary one for implementation and tracking and reporting out to the membership. So thanks, Don, for taking that on.
Yeah, just one last comment, Steve, just to reinforce again, this is the first step really in working with getting things established. And there is certainly no expectation that this is where it stops on looking at additional locations potentially as we go. So I would just reinforce again, please get in touch with us if you have any further ideas or any potential places that we can be looking at. And we expect that to happen. So we want this to be a continuous process.
Great, thank you. Next, we're up to agenda item H. This is the US Route 15 Corridor Improvement Study findings. We've shared information in this past. There's been work groups and a lot of public outreach and some public meetings to date. And we're glad to have Brian here with us today to kind of lead you through this corridor study with a primary focus on the Union County piece of it. But we'll go ahead and bring up the presentation and share that here hopefully in a second. But if there's anything introductory you want to share, Brian, as I'm getting that up and ready for you, feel free.
Thank you, Steve, and good morning, everyone. Wanted to provide a briefing to the MPO board with regard to the work that the MPO has been involved in with regard to this important corridor study up in Union and Lycoming counties. And just as a reminder, this has been a collaborative effort between both the SEDA COG MPO and the Williamsport MPO here the past several months. But we have been working with Williamsport. They've served as the fiscal agent and worked with SEDA COG as a partner in the overall project. Just as a reminder too, I remind everyone that this project is really an outgrowth of a larger planning initiative that the MPO had partnered with Williamsport MPO on, looking at the CSVT. And around the same time as the opening of the northern section of CSVT a little over 2 years ago. And we were looking at, with the opening of the northern section, what kind of impacts was that going to have on surrounding roadway networks within the broader region. And Route 15 had been identified as one of those priority corridors that the MPOs agreed that we needed to take a closer look at. So we're looking at planning for the impacts on surrounding roadways. And I think for both MPOs, there was a desire there to try to stay ahead of any anticipated changes that CSVT is going to bring to the region. Some of the slide, please, that some of the initial modeling work that our team had done looking at how CSVT was going to change travel patterns throughout the region had indicated that there's an anticipated reduction in overall traffic volumes on Route 15 by as much as 15%. So with that, the planners from both MPOs were interested in taking a look at this corridor as one of the priorities, one of the corridors that really traverses both of the MPO regions, to take a look at opportunities for imagining a re-envisioned corridor in light of the changes that CSVT were going to make on US 15. Some of our major scope elements, I'm not sure who's dropping them. Thanks, Steve. Some of our major scope elements are what you see here. I'm not going to dwell too much on methodology. I'd rather spend more time on the findings and the recommendations, but I will say that overall the team just followed a traditional approach with regard to the execution of the overall corridor study. We had a steering committee that met several times throughout the process, did a field view with members of the steering committee. Also had two public meetings that were very well attended. The second meeting in particular, I would characterize it as very spirited. With the people who were in attendance, there's much public interest with regard to improvements on Route 15 through the Allenwood area. Major study elements are as they appear here on this screen. This illustrates some of the major elements that the study explored, including an overall vision for the corridor. We were especially interested in traffic operations, signage, the passing lanes that exist on Route 15, posted speed limits. Overall, I think all of the elements that you see here really fall under a broad umbrella of safety. That's the MPO's top priority. It's certainly PennDOT's top priority. And all of these things entered into our assessment of the corridor. I'll say a few words about the existing conditions of the corridor, just a few notes there on some of our findings. Again, just an overview of the study corridor. It traverses 4 municipalities across Lycoming and Union counties. We were looking at the Route 15 corridor essentially from its intersection with Route 54 all the way down to its interchange with Interstate 80. But I will say the segments of the corridor that received more emphasis were between 54 and 44 there in Allenwood. Quick look at some of the zoning districts that exist within the study area. With all of the acreage that's available for development, again, both counties, both MPO regions have identified this area as part of a designated growth area, primed for additional development. And so a third of the study area is already zoned for commercial development. So there's a lot of parcels within the study area that will eventually turn over to more intensive uses and create increases in travel demand throughout the corridor. Under the travel characteristics, 15 is a principal arterial, obviously a major link from here to Williamsport, especially before Interstate 180 was constructed. It experiences volumes in excess of 10,000 vehicles daily. And again, one of the overarching areas of concern that was raised by our steering committee, as well as from members of the public who attended the public meetings, a lot of interest in what can be done with regard to safety, and particularly with the high rates of speed and corresponding concerns with safety that are present throughout the corridor. We looked at overall crash activity within the corridor for the 5-year period, 2018 to 2022. The study report, if you have an opportunity to download that, the report includes detailed information on crashes and crash activity at throughout the corridor, both within the different segments as well as the various intersections, both the signalized intersections and stop control intersections. But over 100 crashes were reported over that 5-year period. Nearly a third of them involved deer. That was interesting. I just hit a deer earlier this week, so that resonated with me. Under the study recommendations, we were looking at a mix of recommendations dealing with traffic and transportation as well as land use, given the emphasis on the land use decisions that are made, how that has an impact on the efficiency and safety of the roadway. Some of the draft recommendations as they're categorized or organized are shown here on this screen. Again, looking at different aspects that we were looking at addressing speed and congestion management, highway safety, what kind of improvements should we be looking at throughout the different intersections up and down the corridor. And then on the land use side, Steve touched on complete streets policy that the MPO approved here in recent months. There's a number of recommendations that are oriented toward addressing land use throughout the corridor. So I'll start first with a quick rundown through some of the traffic and transportation related recommendations. Again, the overarching concern was speeding and speed management along the corridor. There is a proposal for increased enforcement to better regulate vehicle speeds. This is especially a problem in the Allenwood area, if you're familiar with that, with how 15 transitions from a 4-lane divided highway down to a 2-lane undivided highway. So the residents there in Allenwood really had a lot to say with regard to issues that they're dealing with there with speeding and traffic through the village there. Other improvement areas are more outside of the SEDA COG region, but I'll just touch on them briefly here. There's a number of stop controlled intersections that provide access to and from Route 15. If you're familiar with some of these, Cemetery Hill Road, we are proposing some modifications within the median to allow for more safety for southbound traffic that would be turning left on the Cemetery Hill Road. Just to provide some more protection for motorists making that movement. And PennDOT, we've coordinated with them. They're certainly open to restriping that part of the corridor to allow for that. Some of the other intersections that we looked at included Pinchtown Road, shown there on the screen. We're looking at a potential turn restriction study at that intersection to determine whether or not that should be right in, right out at that location. Other intersection improvements we looked at, I'll just quickly touch on the ones there north of here in Lycoming County. At the intersection with Route 54, we're looking at some signal timing adjustments there. We're also proposing a new right turn lane if you're southbound on 15, going through that intersection there by the Sheets. If you're headed southbound, the intersection does meet warrants for a new right turn lane if you're headed southbound going through that intersection. So there is some queuing that's taking place there. And so that turning lane will help better manage the queuing that's taking place there. Alexander Drive, also concerns with speeding there, with as well as lane development impacts that are anticipated at that particular intersection. So many of the improvements that are going to be needed there are going to be driven by the magnitude of the level of development that will be occurring there, feeding traffic to and from Alexander Drive. The one with primary interest to this group would be the one there in Union County, there in Allenwood, looking at the intersection of 15 there and 44 in Allenwood. Similar to the intersection with Route 54, there's a lot of vehicle queuing that's happening here in both directions, both in the morning and the peak period. So we're looking at the study proposes some improvements there at that intersection to the signals, as well as adding features there to improve pedestrian accommodation at that intersection with push buttons and pedestrian countdown timers to provide better accommodation for pedestrian traffic there in the village. Okay, see, that was actually the next slide, but no harm done. Under the land use and complete streets type recommendations, there were a number of land use related recommendations that came out of the study process, focusing on various tools and techniques that can be used to improve safety in the corridor. Steve mentioned earlier the need for complete streets policies. That's been a new policy that's been adopted here by the MPO in recent months, and the study report does advocate for complete streets policies there, particularly within the Allenwood area. Not only policies, but next slide talks about complete streets projects, as there are locations for future improvements like sidewalks, crosswalks, and other pedestrian features there in the area. The study report does advocate for going after those approvals that would be needed for constructing complete streets projects within the area. The report is also advocating for or encouraging the adoption of official maps. These aren't very common in this part of the state, but it is a way that municipalities can use to preserve corridors that are needed for future public use. Some of the examples official maps can be used in this regard are shown there on the screen. In this case, primarily for shared use paths for cyclists and pedestrians, as well as for trail connections to other locations within the broader study area. We do talk about the Middle Susquehanna Bicycle Pedestrian Plan and some of the features that were identified in that planning effort. And so the US 15 corridor study looks at ways of facilitating connections to and from those features that were identified in the Middle Susquehanna Bicycle Pedestrian Plan. And just to wrap up, we continue to meet with representatives from both the SEDA COG MPO and as well as Watts. We've met with the task force throughout the duration of the planning process, but we have put together an implementation plan that's included as part of the study report. So there's more information there in terms of the projects, policies that are proposed as part of the study report, who's going to be taking a leadership role, who's more of in a support role, what is the timing of the recommendation in terms of when that would be implemented. Overall, we are encouraging Watts and SEDA COG to continue to work together along with its partners at PennDOT District 3, especially as future planning and programming work continues, related to this corridor in Union and Lycoming counties. So I will leave it there. We will be presenting a similar presentation focused more on Lycoming County. We'll be meeting with the Watts MPO later this month on August 26th, and we'll be presenting this for their action as well. I will leave it there. If anyone has any questions or comments.
Any questions, comments, suggestions about the Route 15 corridor improvement study?
I have one question. With the future of CSBT, the completion of that, and the impact on traffic projections there, was that looked at? I know some of the safety improvements were more focused on queuing. So is there any potential future impact there with the completion of CSBT and reduction of traffic on 15 that would alleviate the queuing?
Well, queuing was observed post CSVT. The openings 2 years ago, and our data collection was done after the opening of so there is queuing taking place even after the opening of CSVT.
I just didn't know with the entirety of it being open. Some folks I know I travel that corridor with the family that way. Sometimes I'll take 15, sometimes I'll take the northern section now that it's open, but I didn't know if that would have any impact on it or not.
It's hard to identify and project all that, but some of the land use things you're looking at, build out of some of these industrial parks and areas, a lot of new truck traffic coming in.
Yeah.
There'll still be increases and other impacts to be mitigated on the corridors. So, but yeah, definitely we heard a lot from the public on the speeding, distracted driving, and improper driving throughout the corridor. And you can't always solve those, obviously, through any kind of engineering or encouragement or education. But that's certainly now hot and heavy, and then just concerns over future land development and growth along the border and what that means for transforming, their communities and villages and such.
Nate, when I mentioned the modeling efforts, the modeling work that volumes were anticipated to drop by 15%, a lot of people in the audience just, they weren't buying that yet. They're not buying it. So, especially with Steve mentioned all of the proposed land development corridors, it's gonna be a wash.
Yeah. I would think it might even possibly increase because of the development possibilities. The north branch or section of CSBT is already open, has been. And if you've been seeing these numbers now, they're only gonna go up, I think, if you start developing those areas with industry.
Especially if you're taking that through traffic away corridor and seeing more of that on 180, it does open up.
Yeah.
Possibilities in the corridor.
Yeah, industrial expansion, certainly the Lycoming County landfill is expanding as well, and that's a big draw for a lot of truck trips into there. I'm not sure what all those details are in their plans, but that's going to have impacts and certainly safety implications. And some upgrades will occur just with the normal, TIS and HOP processes. But yeah, we're glad to see this kind of implementation framework, things and common acceptance of the district staff and what was being put forward and proposed. And so hopefully we'll be able to use this in future TIP development, long range plan development, fold this plan right into that, those processes. We continue to work with the county and the local government, a variety of businesses that are having a lot of activity going on.
So I heard there was heard about the Spears meeting now, but I guess part of that was the rumor about converting the 4 lanes through the village. I'm assuming that didn't make it as a recommendation.
It was never a recommendation. There were a lot of rumors. There were other rumors that we were going to make the divided highway so southbound traffic couldn't get into reptile land and things like that. I mean, there were all kinds of things that came up there. Yeah, that was 4 laning. That was never on the table. We made that clear to the public that evening.
Any other questions for Ryan about the recommendations?
I guess another question is that bottleneck at 44 and 15. Do you think some of that would be alleviated with signal upgrades, or what's your guys' thinking on that?
That's what the traffic engineers, that's where they landed with the improvements that needed through improving the operation of the signal there would help alleviate some of the congestion that's being experienced there. But both, those signalized intersections, both at 44 and 54, both of them are experiencing queuing during the peak periods.
So next week is Little Lake World Series, so you'll expect some.
Yeah, they'll be back at the top of the hill. That way Deer Town short.
Thank you very much, Brian. If there aren't any further questions, kind of like our last action item, we would look to have a motion to approve the study recommendations and to use them in our future planning and programming.
Make a motion to accept the findings.
Thank you, Jim, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Yes, we'll go second.
Greg, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, thank you very much. I'll stop sharing, and then next will be a verbal update from Kristen on the 4-day transit plan.
Sure. So we've been working with Rockland Planning on this. It's a joint venture as well with Watts MPO. And we did provide comment on the draft plan in July. And once those comments are finalized and integrated into the plan, we'll have the story map as well developed between Morgan and Rockland Planning Assistance from Bryce. We hope that the plan will be able to be ready for adoption at the October MPO meeting, but we won't be having the 30-day comment period as part of that process. So it will depend on when we get the finalized plan back from Rockland, whether it will be on the October meeting agenda or the final agenda.
Kristen, any questions about that process or the future schedule? Thank you. Next is the long-range transportation plan, and Kristen and Brian are going to cover this, I believe, both.
So the LRTP update is really gearing up, and there's a lot going on at this time. We did have our first steering committee meeting on Monday, which went really well. We've tried to expand the particular interest groups engaged in the process. So we have some Lauren Bryson from local central Pennsylvania representing some economic development interests. We've got people from the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership providing input in terms of active transportation, and some other folks from Human Services and Transit Agency. Dan is or was on the line of STEP. He's involved as well. And so we're really excited about seeing where this goes in the future. I'll let Brian provide some updates if he wants to, and there's a slide deck on that. And can highlight the public input we'll be getting.
Thank you, Kristen. We've got a couple slides here that we can throw up on the screen here just as a visual, just to guide you through where we are with regard to the planning process. But Kristen's right. We just met with our steering committee for the very first time earlier this week. And just as a reminder, your current plan was adopted back in June of 2021. So the clock is ticking. That plan will expire in June of 2026. So one of the good things about this process is that we have a lot of time to work on the planning process. I've worked in some other regions where we have 9 or 10 months to put a plan together. So we have a generous schedule, generous time allowance here in working together in putting the long-range plan together. So some of the benefits of that expanded schedule is it's going to allow us to spend more time and focus on data collection in the remainder of this year. As we move into 2025, we're going to be spending more time and emphasis on the draft policies that will be included in the plan, as well as the draft projects. We're going to be spending more time on identifying a prioritized list of projects for the LRTP as part of our work next year. Some of the major planning themes that the plan update is going to address are, as you see here on the screen. With our work in long-range planning, it's always evolving. There's always new requirements and provisions that are being made available at the federal and at the state level. And this cycle is no different. There's going to be new areas of emphasis that SEDA COG is going to need to be paying attention to as part of the plan update. So it relates to things like asset management and system performance. There's also an opportunity to build on some of the previous planning initiatives that the MPO has been involved in recent months. Steve mentioned, for example, the MPO, you got a brand new strategic plan. The LRTP is going to be a great way to help implement that. There's other planning studies that have been done. I thought of the Danville area traffic and transportation study work that was done here several months ago. Again, the long-range plan is going to be really help serve as a vehicle for advancing some of those initiatives that came out of that planning process. And finally, the last bullet on that screen there, I want to emphasize this. When you think about your last plan, the last cycle was done during COVID. Know that threw a lot of us into confusion in terms of how are we going to engage the public now? How are we going to do this remotely? When COVID started to unfold, and there was a lot of hand wringing over how are we going to be engaging the public when we have to do everything remotely. So that's a problem, previous cycle. But SEDA COG, along with many other planning partners who were working on their own plans around that same time, innovated, did different things, learned different tools for engaging the public. And we're using tools today now that are commonplace to us. But 4 or 5 years ago, they were more of a novelty. But I think with this plan update, we're going to have an opportunity to do more, not only with the tools that we have available to us to give opportunity for people to be involved remotely, but also in the traditional sense through other things that we're going to be doing. As part of our steering committee meeting earlier this week, we talked to the committee about different things that we're going to be doing to try to bring more people into the planning process. There is a public survey that we've developed and we ran by the committee earlier this week. We're going to be using MetroQuest as part of that effort. It's very similar to types of survey work that the State Transportation Commission uses. It's part of the biennial update of the 12-year program. So we're going to be using that. We're going to be releasing the survey here later this month. I think August 27th, Kristen, was the date we had talked about. So we'll have a public survey available out on the street, and we'll be looking to you as MPO members to really help raise awareness of the opportunity for people to participate through that survey process. We're also going to be conducting a number of stakeholder interviews. I think we have about 20 of them that have been planned. So we're working with the committee and identifying, who are the specific individuals that we need to be coordinating with on that. We've also have been working with MPO staff on a playbook to really help guide our efforts on stakeholder and public engagement. And so we've been working with Kristen on that, as well as Nancy Osborne, SEDA COG's new communications coordinator. Some of the major elements that we're going to be addressing as part of the LRTP update are, as you see here on the screen, beginning with the regional profile. MPO staff has been busy collecting data to update the information that's in your existing plan. I mentioned stakeholder and public engagement with the public survey, the interviews that we're going to be doing. We're also going to be conducting listening sessions throughout the region. There are 4 of them that we're going to be looking at areas like Elysburg, Lewistown, Lewisburg. Can't remember the 4th one. Waukegan. So we're going to be coming soon to a neighborhood near you. We're going to be taking the planning process out on the road and again, giving people an opportunity. If they don't want to participate remotely, if they prefer that face-to-face contact, we're going to be providing that as part of this process. So they'll have opportunity to engage MPO staff, PennDOT district staff, the county planners. It's a great opportunity for the MPO to really build goodwill, among the public and be transparent in terms of how it does its work. There's other aspects up there. The revenue forecast, we're going to be drawing from the financial guidance that comes out from PennDOT. We're anticipating financial guidance coming out probably thinking around April, next spring, around that time frame. So those will be the best numbers that we have available to project the amount of revenue that the MPO could reasonably expect to receive over the life of the plan. Just lightly touch on some of these other elements, the needs assessment, project prioritization. We're going to be spending more time on that this cycle, looking at developing a priority list of candidate projects for consideration as part of this. And it's very important that the LRTP really serve as a gatekeeper for future tips, for future 12-year programs. That's really one of the essential roles of the LRTP is to accomplish that. We'll also be doing work with regard to environmental justice, environmental resources. We'll be engaging the ACM, or the agency coordination meeting, at some point next year with regard to our assessment of how our proposed program would interact with the region's environmental resources. It'd be an opportunity for us to engage groups like the EPA and the Fish and Boat Commission and others on strategies that they would like to see incorporated in this plan to help mitigate their program's impact on the environment. So we'll be doing that at some point next year. And then performance measures. This is an area that FHWA is, as well as PennDOT, is putting more and more emphasis on. We've seen that for the past 10 years, since the passage of MAP 21. So there will be an assessment of how the region's transportation system is performing. That will be part of the overall work. I'll just wrap things up with a few words about the project schedule. I know you can't read it, but just wanted to convey, again, how much time we have to do all the work, especially that one bar there. I think it's task 7 or 8 throughout next year. With this schedule that we have, we're going to have more time than what we've ever had before to really work with you and coordinate with you on developing criteria for evaluating the merits of a candidate project. The public's going to be offering ideas for the MPO to consider. We need to have criteria in place in order to evaluate and do some kind of scoring of these candidate projects. So we'll have more of a time allowance next year to accommodate that. So I'll just wrap up with a few notes on next steps. Kristen already touched on some of these. The data collection work is going to continue. That really helps provide the MPO with a baseline, existing conditions from which it plans. So we'll be working on that here throughout the remainder of the year, as well as our public and stakeholder outreach efforts. That's really going to dominate our attention here throughout the rest of the year. The listening sessions, the interviews, the public survey, all of that is going to be a full court press in those areas here through the end of the year. So future meetings, we're going to have more detailed information to share with you with regard to some of the things that we're hearing as we engage with the stakeholders and the public here throughout the next several months.
Just along those lines, yeah, we try to take advantage, leverage existing meetings. So if there's things that you feel in your counties be really valuable for us to go out, solicit information, feedback on this long range plan update, feel free to let us know. We've been trying to identify some prominent ones up front, but certainly open to other solicitations and recommendations on that process as we move forward. The listening sessions would be great. All we got to do the survey. If we hit some pop-up meetings or have materials out there, but if there's specific presentations that you want us to tailor to groups or assemblies in your region, just let us know.
I just want to point out a few things. As Brian mentioned, we'll be launching the MetroQuest survey August 27th, and it'll run through the end of September. So we'd really like your cooperation in helping us get the word out to the public about that, sharing it in any means that you have available to you. It is going to include, as was mentioned, kind of the same thing that the State Transportation Committee does in terms of there is a map piece to it where you will be able to drop a point on an intersection and make a comment that, there's always queues there and it's always backed up, or it's a pedestrian safety issue or whatever that might be. It always floods in that location. So that will be really helpful, I think, to engage the public in getting that. Obviously, we have the listening sessions scheduling in the next couple months. We'll let you know when they are, where they are. If you are able to, again, share that information out with your constituents, that would be really great. And lastly, for the group, we will be soliciting projects lists through the counties. We don't want to be redundant with all the other lists we constantly ask you for in terms of projects, but we will be reaching out in the next month or two on that particular item. So much for those contacts. Thank you.
Thank you.
So certainly a lot more to follow, and appreciate your engagement in this process. There's a lot of different elements to the long range plan. That's why we have to begin it so early in advance of that June 2026 deadline for adopting the update. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Brian. Next on our agenda, we're up to item K in your packet that begins right after those long range plan slides. So page around number 50 of 93 is kind of where the material begins. We just are a month into the current Unified Planning Work Program for fiscal year 24-25, but we commenced pretty quickly the development of the next one. And this will get us back on a 2-year cycle. So it'll be fiscal year 25 to 27. Thanks, Brian. To cover a 2-year work program like we were accustomed to, but we got off schedule with the TIP. That was the intent of doing this bridge single year 24-25 program. So for those of you that are new members and maybe joined us this year, there's some background slides included in your packet here. Essentially, the work program identifies all of the prominent major task activities that the MPO is going to address over the state fiscal year period. Who's going to do the work, what the major deliverables are, action items, the time frames associated with those, and the budget, all the cost elements with our federal, state, and local shares. So there's some other background there you can find about, work programs, the different elements. There's always an overview, prospectus, introductory section, and then you dig into your primary tasks, action items, and deliverables, and the budget materials. So there are a couple of things that were new for this update. Those are on page 55. So again, that getting us back to a 2-year cycle. Which would be nice for, kind of stability, certainty, and you're not developing a new work program right away. There's some streamlined, language in there from what was in the past. Some of the guidance, links, resources have been all updated by PennDOT. Some newer elements of the federal bipartisan infrastructure law have been addressed within here. And some of the appendix items, and we're glad we were chosen again to be inserted in there as an example for like a medium, small size MPO for how we design our work program. And some others across the state, their example guidance document was incorporated, their more recent update. Ultimately, kind of schedule wise, we have these months here in the summer to refine the task, what's carrying over, new things to be worked on. That members, want to propose, recommend any supplemental studies for statewide competitive funding or the PennDOT Connects funding. Those kinds of things can come together, and we're more than welcome to receive those from you. Our adoption deadline is January 31st of 2025. We have to provide, the PennDOT, the Federal Highway Administration, for at least a 45-day review period before it's considered by the MPO. So we wanted to get a preliminary version of it before you hear today. It was in the packet that was shared, on Tuesday this week. If you have suggestions, comments, recommendations, we'd look for those hopefully by the end of this month, maybe August 30th. And then we can refine it, get it out to our transit operators, Federal Transit Administration for review, and then have it again in the packet for our October 4th meeting as a revised version. Then we'll make sure it's out to all the reviewing agencies for enough time. And then that's to address any comments before November 22nd. That would be the MPO meeting, our last meeting of the year. We would look to have adoption of the next work program. So within the packet, then we do actually have the preliminary version of our 25-27 work program. So you'll find that there. I called out in the email with your packet a few things we'd really like to highlight for member eyes or consideration. Some of those include the local planning studies initiatives for which you would like to see the MPO staff participate in. So that's page 64 of your packet. We identified bullets there for some ongoing existing studies and initiatives that we've already been engaged on, or we think over the next 2 years you'd like to see us participate in. So any of the counties, local governments, PennDOT, please feel free to identify any additional studies or initiatives that you'd like to see us engage on as the MPO staff and as an overall body. And we can make sure we reflect those in the bulleted list there, page 64 of your packet, page 7 of the work program. There's some yellow highlights in here, and that was just to note some pending things until they're further defined. There'll be a new finding on the 2025 tip from Federal Highway Administration, so we'll incorporate that. Some of these dates that were tentative for actions on a few of the milestones in your tables of plans, like the coordinated transit plan referenced earlier, and then some of the just timeline for the approvals on the document. The actual actions, procedures, tasks begin on page 12. There's some core things that we just are charged and responsible for doing, routinely and regularly. We identified some of these other things for long-range plan development, implementation of some of these recent studies, such as the electric vehicle charging stations today, the Route 15 corridor study, and otherwise. You'll see reflected within the draft document as well. So I'm not going to, we're 11:06. We have a couple other agenda items, kind of really walk through that, but open the floor to any comments, questions at this time. And then if you do have a chance by the end of August, we'd look to see any suggestions you have for tasks you want to see the MPO work on, things that we'd like to see us support at your local level. And then if there are any transportation, land use kind of coordination studies you'd like to propose for supplemental planning funds, either the 80% federal funds, 20% local, or the PennDOT Connects, which is nice to have that 100% funding option. So things we've done in the past there with like Hogan Boulevard corridor study for bicycle pedestrian needs, the Route 522 safety study in Snyder County, and the Danville study that Brian referenced earlier, the PennDOT Connect study as well. So the Route 15 study that we just mentioned that Lycoming County put in, that was a PennDOT Connect transportation planning study also. So if there's things you think are good fits for those, feel free to let us know. We can submit those as part of this work program development. And we'll refine the budget. We did get the allocations from PennDOT with the guidance, but we haven't broken that down with the pro rata, the federal, state, local shares yet. We'll do that for your next meeting so you can see what the intended budgets are for each TAP. The four TAPs 1 through 3 that we have, and then the supplemental stuff that we do, the LTAP. That number we did insert because it's kind of static. It's been the same $35,000 per year for all the LTAP activities and programming that we do. And then the increasing safe, accessible transportation options funds. That number went down by 1,000. This time it was 16,000 for the current year, but it's 15,000 over the next 2 fiscal years. We do have those funds identified, but we'll break out the other budget table items for your October 4th meeting. Good questions, comments on the work program, or any suggestions at this stage? And I'll stop sharing there, make sure I can check the chat. I don't see anything in the chat at this time, but yeah, feel free to email us, give us a call if there's things you find related to some of the specific requests for the work program, and we'll be continuing to coordinate with all of you on that process, and you'll see at least twice more before it's adopted. Next on our agenda is Bryce to give us an update on the active transportation committee goings on and work. And then if you did want to share the things we didn't touch in the staff report on the zoning web map or the online missile vector.
Yeah, the one I cut off, but for Middle Susquehanna Active Transportation Committee. First one to start out with the bicycle pedestrian counts program. So in about 5 weeks, we're finishing up the 23-24 counts. So those, again, as a reminder, were in the county. So we had 2 on the Lock Haven Riverwalk and another 4 on the Bald Eagle Valley Trail. As of the last month, I checked on them. Happy to report we have no issues besides an ant colony in one of them, but no issues there. I'm really happy with that. We already sent some of the preliminary data to the county. So again, that's wrapping up 5 weeks. We'll have a report out similar to the one that you guys saw in October last cycle for this particular region. Our next cycle will be starting right after that. We already talked to Columbia and Monroe counties. We have permission from the borough of Berwick to put one on the Berwick Test Track Trail, as well as 2 on the Columbia County's Pittsburgh Grip Trail. Bob, I want to talk to you afterwards to see if we can figure out places for Monroe County. And I think Lisa's on this as well. I'll reach out to you separately after this to try and confirm those places on the new bar trail. And then, as mentioned during the last couple of meetings, Dr. Byler, our partner from Bucknell University on this, is spreading at least our work to a more national level. So she's hopefully her report will be published pretty soon in the Transportation Research Board's national magazine. So she had that sent out, the edited version, about a month ago. So hopefully in the next 2 magazines or so we get publishing that. And then she also just presented our last cycle's data at the Transportation Engineers annual meeting in Philadelphia. So it was about 3 weeks ago. She had a poster. That poster will be included in our next cycle's report. So if you want to see that, it'll be there. I think that's it for House program meeting schedule coming forward. Our next MSATC meetings in 2 weeks, the 21st. So 2 to 4 p.m. on Teams here if you want to come in. If anybody's not on that listing, if you want to let me know, I can look out the listing. I think that's it, at least for MSATC. And then I can pull up to go back to Don's LTAP comments. So we've been working on a dashboard similar to the one that you're familiar with for our tip mods. Let me screen share. goes up. There you go. So this is something we've been working on off and on for the past year or so, with Don's help getting LTAP data from PennDOT as well. This is just a way to mark what municipalities and counties are using this free service from LTAP, the local technical assistance program. Each of these bars at the top have, different categories. So if you want to look at where the in-person courses have been taking place, where tech assists have been taking place, our personal workshops, like you was mentioning before with the chainsaw safety, et cetera. But you can click on each of municipalities, goes, see, how many tech assists you had throughout the years, how many people have attended, stuff like that, and as well as a bar at the bottom with the different, years. So a lot to explore in these. This is more of a sneak peek for you guys. It's not set yet because we're still waiting on virtual training data from PennDOT, as well as the 2024 values. So hopefully we can get this to you guys by the next MPO meeting and be able to share, further out. Since that, I'm not ready to share our next two projects yet, just because they're not, aesthetically where I want them to be. But we have a regional map viewer for our 11 county region as well as the MPO, as well as a zoning dashboard for all 11 counties in the MPO. So both of those been slow and steady, lining up our GIS data that we get from our counties as well as the GIS data that we get from PennDOT. So hopefully we get those to you as well next cycle. Couple things and coming out of the GIS office.
They were always trying to leverage these new tools and what we're able to do through our ArcGIS Online and our Esri platform. So this will be really good to get it out there for this dashboard for LTAP. We already have it for the long range plan. Performance measures like Brian referenced earlier. And these are definitely more visually appealing, more interactive. People can slice and dice and filter down the different areas and make much more advantageous than our kind of static PDF reports we've done in the past. So glad to make these tools available. Thank you, Bryce. Next, if there are any questions for Bryce's member forum, we're kind of rounding it out. We only have 15 minutes left, so I think we'll probably get out a little bit early. We have in here just the typical kind of interest items that we track for folks. I think there's really just two that I'm going to highlight, and then we'll open the floor for anything that the members want to report on or ask questions about. First, the State Transportation Advisory Committee had an online panel discussion this week on e-commerce, some of the trends that are occurring there, transportation implications, land use implications of that. There was a survey that we as an MPO were at complete. We had done that. And so the panel this week had some good discussion, Amazon, local government, industry, economic developers, and MPO speakers talking about that. So there's more to report, and it's a final study. We'll make sure we get it out to the members and provide those links in the future. The funding kind of side of things that we typically include here, we have the federal programs, the state programs. Just note that the rail freight program was kind of a late addition as we were preparing this packet, but we included that in time on page 91. Those of you interested, you can see that. The State Bureau of Rail Freight soliciting the typical rail freight assistance program and the rail transportation assistance program projects. I know the SEDA COG Joint Rail Authority right next door here is working on a couple of major projects, and they're a railroad operator and short price of shippers in the region as well. So we'll look forward to hopefully some successful applications there. On the walkwork side of things, the city of Lock Haven, Clinton County was successful for their active transportation planning grant. So we noted that. And I think Colmont Borough also went in, didn't get this full money, but they kind of got the smaller, lesser support grant so they can be more competitive in the future. So we're glad that two municipalities in the region are pursuing active transportation plans and taking those positive steps. And I think that was all that I was going to touch upon there. So anything that members saw they want to ask about within any of the packet materials or just things you're working on in your regions. And everyone online, please feel free to unmute yourself as well.
Steve, one response for additional help. one of the things you just linked to, the new ADA requirements, especially for public right away, as it impacts trails and so on. I've tried to digest it, even having challenging times, it's actually a big one for an educational opportunity for how those new ADA rules would affect some of our local trail groups.
Excellent. Yeah, we can, I know it's been issued. I haven't done a lot of the webinars to fit those in on the new guidance, but if there's things from either PennDOT, the LTAP side of things, that might be a good one. Yeah, they have a course and they go out and do tech assists for municipalities. So if there's specific aspects of that, I think you'd probably be able to submit, but definitely Greg, definitely the local governments can submit those. That's one good free service. And then if it's a future agenda topic, I think we were looking for such recommendations so we can maybe line up a speaker to come to the MPO and talk about that, maybe hone in on the trails, but cover some other pieces as well. So sure, if anything, Nathan, that's been discussed at all, or if you kind of know who a lead is, maybe at a PennDOT central office as well, we could kind of work on the lineup of speaker.
Yeah, that's a follow-up after this, and then get back to the damn. A good lead would be on that topic.
So I know we certainly know Trish from our days when she was at Center County, the state's like headquarters here, but with her or whoever it might be, I think that'd be a good topic to bring. The others we kind of lined up before were like for the regional operation plan, transportation systems management operations. We'll try to do those. Some of the resiliency things, maybe the protect carbon reduction program funds and so on. So thanks for adding that, Bob, for the ADA. Any other good of the order member forum type discussions? Hearing none, and I don't see anything in the chat. We would then look to have a motion to adjourn and reconvene on October 4th. Sean, thank you for the motion. Do we have a second? Second. We'll give it a hair to Greg Moulton there. Thank you all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, everybody have a nice weekend. Stay safe and dry.
Thank you. Take care.
How are you doing?